Welcome back to Strength Happens, where we share real stories, resources, and support for families of individuals with special needs. I'm Janine.
And I'm Jill. And today we're talking about one of the biggest milestones and sometimes one of the biggest unknowns for our kids as young adults, but also for us as families. What happens once our kids graduate high school?
Yeah, because that moment, the cap and gown, family celebrations, it's beautiful. But the day after, families can feel kind of like they've fallen off a cliff. The structure of school is gone, no more IEP meetings, and now you're looking at what's next for your child.
And if you have an adult child with special needs, what's next can mean a lot of different things. We talked about in our previous episode about those kids who are going to college, but there's other alternatives as well. There may be adult day programs, supported employment, vocational training, or maybe a mix of all three. So, in this episode, we're going to break down those options, share some success stories, and maybe give you some practical steps to start planning before graduation ever happens.
So let's start with the basics. This transition period begins while they're still in high school. And did you know the law IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, requires transition planning to begin by age of 16 in most states?
Exactly. And in some places, it's even earlier, age 14. So, right when your kiddo starts high school, the vocational rehabilitation transition planning will start during that year. That's when you should start having that real conversation in the IAP meetings about what's going to come after school ends. Too often, parents wait until the senior year, and that's when the scramble happens. And you may miss some things that you really need to put in place for your kiddo to be as successful as possible.
Yeah, I remember when going to Morgan's first IEP meeting in high school. And I was really surprised that there was a transition specialist included in the meeting, along with the PT, the OT, the vision, her teachers. And at the time, I was thinking, why are we already talking about post graduation? Because it felt so far away.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents can feel that way. Like you're just trying to get them through the school year, and suddenly they're talking about life after high school. And you're like, wait, my baby just started high school.
And during that transition, like we talked about in previous episodes, on how just going back to school any year can be so traumatic or
Daunting. Yeah.
stressful, anxious. And then we're walking in, and it's time to talk about post post secondary.
And sometimes it's like you start in that freshman IEP meeting with a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and you're like, wait, my kid may not have the capabilities to hold a job, but there's other things they do that can help you through that transition period. Doesn't have to be a job, it doesn't have to be college, it could be that adult day program. And it's learning what are the opportunities that are going to be available in the next 4 years. You don't have to plan it all in one day. You get all of high school to start preparing for that transition.
Exactly. I quickly learned that this is actually the best time to start thinking about what to do with your child after graduation because the transition specialist explained what happens when your child turns 18. Legally, they're considered an adult. That means they suddenly have the right to make decisions about their life, their finances, their health, and just like any other young adult.
Which sounds
And
great in theory,
yeah,
but for some individuals with special needs, this can be risky without having the right supports. And I remember when you all went through that, how stressful a lot of that balancing act was. I didn't even have to start considering on the same levels that your family did.
yeah, that's when we started talking about special needs guardianship and that there are different degrees of guardianship. You can
Mhm.
control some or all of the legal decision making depending on what your child needs. And in Morgan's case, because of her cognitive disabilities and all her complex medical needs, we decided on full guardianship. And that was a hard decision because we worked her whole entire life trying to take away all these barriers. And then all of a sudden when she's 18, you're putting those barriers back in place. It kind of seemed like it didn't
Counterintuitive
sit right
almost.
with me, even though I know that's what needed to happen.
That's not a decision, obviously, you guys took lightly because you really did fight to allow Morgan to be as independent as possible. And as you're saying, then you're putting up structures so that you could have more control over her decision making because she couldn't make those decisions for herself. But
Right.
you did what was right for your family.
Well, it's deeply personal, and that's why, everyone's situation is different. You need to hire a lawyer who really understands special needs law, and it took
Absolutely.
us a while to find one. I called multiple law offices, and no one seemed to really understand what we were needing or didn't specialize in it. So I ended up asking other parents that had gone through the process and was able to finally found someone that specialized in elder law but was experienced in guardianship cases.
And I imagine you learned a lot through that process of trial and error.
We did. Two big things is the cost and the timeline. Once Morgan turned 18, we could no longer make medical decisions for her until the guardianship was finalized. So that's why we made that a priority and started the process well before her birthday so there would be no gap in her care because you can't predict any hospitalizations. The
Absolutely.
costs can add up, but depending on your state, you may be able to download the paperwork online and file it yourself. The transition specialist will be a great resource for that information on what's best for you and your family.
Those are such important tips for parents who are listening. Starting early is huge because paperwork and court dates can take much longer than you think. And as you said, health issues can pop up anywhere. I can't even imagine not being able to make a decision for your kiddo who can't make those decisions for herself,
Right.
all
Because she
because,
doesn't understand.
right, right.
And it's not just about the legal side, it's about making sure Morgan's well being was never at risk during that whole transition.
So let me ask, once guardianship is figured out, what else comes up during those high school transition meetings? We didn't see that side of it.
Yeah. Well, guardianship is just one thing, one piece of the puzzle. And during the whole IEP process, there are so many other areas you need to plan for. Sometimes it's years in advance. I'm talking about job training, part time work, connecting with Voc Rehab, and even exploring adult day programs.
Right. And these aren't the things that just magically happen after graduation. The
No,
groundwork starts while they're still in school. And sometimes those early meetings parents are having are just the first introduction to the idea that their student might remain in high school after the same age peers. I know you can stay till 22 in the state of
it's
Florida.
22.
22.
And they can turn 22 in that calendar year and they till the end of that year.
Even if so if they start at 22 but turn 23 in November, they could finish that whole academic
Yeah.
year? Okay.
Yeah. In fact, Morgan's IEP, we started writing specific goals that would help her set her up for that transition, even though it might not happen for 4 to 6 years.
If you started at 14, it may not be till she's 22,
Yeah.
20.
And
Wow.
then we ended up adding in building workplace skills or practicing social interactions in community settings. There was a lot of different things that I never even would have thought you would add into an IEP goal.
And I would assume that those goals are tailored to each student's ability and what they realistically could start doing for themselves
Yeah.
after school. Is that true?
Absolutely. And that's where the honest conversation comes in. We had to talk openly with the school team because what was really truly possible for Morgan and
Mhm.
what supports will she need? Some students will thrive in a job setting with a job coach, and others might be better suited for an adult day program that focuses on social and life skills. And that's perfectly okay. And the goal is just match the plan to the person, not the other way around.
That's such a good reminder. It's not about forcing a certain path for your child. It's about preparing them for the path that will give them the best quality of life for their future. And I think that's what we want most for our kids anyway, is to have a quality of life, whatever that might be.
Right. And I used to get so anxious at Morgan's IEP meetings when they'd start talking about transitions and all the different paths they'd lay out, like living independently, working a job, going to job training. I just couldn't see it, honestly, because I couldn't imagine what she would be able to do based on her medical diagnoses and her cognitive ability.
And her vision impairment and her
Yeah, there was so much there,
she's multi-dynamic or a young adult now.
Yeah.
So, it's gotta be a tough place as a parent when the plans on the paper that you're hearing from the transitions
Mhm.
team don't seem to match the reality you're seeing day to day.
Exactly, and I'll never forget the one meeting in particular. We were having that same conversation about post-graduation options, and Someone on the team hesitated for a moment and then asked everyone and said, "You know what? Do we all even think Morgan is capable of working after graduation?" And I think at first it shocked me a little bit to hear someone say it out loud, but honestly, I felt a big relief
I
because
bet.
finally someone who knew her other than us and cared for her, they were seeing and thinking the same thing we already were. But I felt afraid to say that in a meeting because I was thinking it made it seem like I didn't have confidence in her ability. But I also saw how she was at home. I'm like, "She can't take care of herself. She's not gonna be able to work." I'm like, "What is she gonna be able to do? She can't see out of one eye. Her hands and her arthritis causes her a lot of problems." So I just didn't see it. So it was a relief to actually hear that someone
Well,
else saw what we saw.
I was gonna say it must be so validating almost, and also bittersweet because it's accepting what you kinda knew in your mama
Mhm.
heart, but to have a teacher who'd worked with her for years also see that you weren't alone in all this, and that it's okay to not have a job after graduation. Like, it's okay to go to an adult day program. That's gonna be the best thing for her.
Right. Because up until then, I'd been feeling guilty that I didn't believe she could hold a job. But the reality is hard to imagine Morgan, who has vision loss and can't read or write, is suddenly gaining skills to find and keep employment. It just didn't add up to me. And it wasn't about doubting her value as a person. It was just being honest about what her abilities and thinking about what would truly support her future and make her the happiest.
And that's exactly where the IEP process comes in, not just checking the boxes, but to really create meaningful, realistic goals that are truly preparing students for what's going to come next in their lives.
Yeah. No, and like you said, that the goals are tailored for each student's abilities and what's realistic for them after school. And
Exactly.
some of them may graduate when they're 18 and go on to jobs, and then there'll be the ones that stay until 22 that are maybe more geared for adult days.
Exactly. And when they're designed and written with the student's unique needs and strengths in mind, those goals become so much more than just checking a box on an IEP form. They're addressing specific skills and experiences that are going to support that student's success, whatever comes next, whether it's college or a job or supported employment or independent living or that adult day program. There's nothing cookie cutter about the process. I think transition goals, just like the students they're created for, have to be unique for them to be successful. They're less about short term academic targets, but more about building that interconnected web of skills, everything from communication and problem solving to daily living and workplace readiness, or even getting that seatbelt in on their own in the van.
Yep.
Honestly, if you work with middle school and high schoolers, putting strong personalized transition goals at the top of their to-do list can make a huge difference when graduation day finally arrives for them, whether that's at 18 or 22.
And I think that's where having those honest conversations is so important, not just with the school team, but with your child or your spouse. Setting
Yeah.
realistic expectations helps avoid disappointment and sets everyone up for success. And some students will thrive in a job setting with a job coach. Others might be better suited for an adult day program focused on social and life skills. But we need to remember that both paths can lead to fulfilling and meaningful lives.
Absolutely. So once those IEP transition goals are set and you have that realistic plan in mind, the next question is how do families connect with programs and services that are really going to make those goals become possible?
In the county we live in, they host job resource fairs to help with the transition.
Oh,
It was
really?
it's an easy way to see what resources are available in the community and speak to different programs all in one location.
It sounds like that's an important start, making those connections while the student is still in high school before graduation. So let's talk about vocational rehabilitation services. These programs are all about helping individuals with disabilities prepare for, find, and keep meaningful jobs. Every state has a VR program and access within the counties. And these free resources for families? And what experience have you had with those?
They're free services. They may attend IEP meetings. You can invite whoever you want to an IEP meeting, but they'll do skill assessments and help find job training programs. They can set up internships. It's not just for traditional employment. They can help identify supported employment options with job coaches or find employers who are disability friendly. Kind of like our local grocery store, Publix. You'll see a lot of them working at Publix, sometimes at Target, and even office jobs, coffee shops. There's a lot of places that do support our community.
Right. VR really does provide tailored training and hands on experience that build those real world skills that individuals need after graduation. And with the right support, adults with intellectual disabilities can thrive in all kinds of workplaces, which not only helps them grow personally, but it enriches the community and the
Hmm.
workforce as a whole because they're working with a group of people that have varying abilities. And it
Hmm.
allows us to be in a more inclusive society.
And that's really the key. It's not about forcing one path. It's about giving individuals the tools and support to succeed in the way that fits them best. So, if you're heading into that first meeting with Voc Rehab, it helps to know what to ask.
Exactly. So here's a few good starter questions for parents. And we'll also have these questions listed in our show notes. But some questions might be: what kind of assessments do you offer to figure out my child's strengths and job interests? So there may be employment assessments and inventories. Do you remember any that they offered to Morgan or?
We didn't go the Voc Rehab route. So, we had identified in the early meetings that she was most likely just going to go to adult daycare, more social. So, we didn't even address
You
Voc
didn't have to
Rehab.
address those. Okay.
Mm-mm.
So there's like the strengths inventory. There's transitional skills inventories. There's a number of inventories that the VR counselor can offer if that's something that's a right fit for your student. Other questions you might ask: can VR get involved while my child's still in high school? The answer is absolutely. What types of job training programs or internships are available in your area? Janine mentioned the grocery store near her community, Publix, offered a job training program, which has been very successful. Other states have
Mhm.
different relationships and partnerships throughout their area. So these are great questions to be asking. You may also want to ask: do you offer job coaching or on the job supports? And what might those on the job supports look like for your child? Another questions could be: how do you work with employers to make sure they're disability friendly?
Mhm.
You want to make sure your child's not being judged or that it's a safe environment for them to be themselves. What's the process and timeline for getting services started? And are there limits on how long VR can support my child once they're employed?
Love that because when you walk into those meetings prepared with questions, you get better answers and you make sure the plan really fits your child's needs, just like you would go into a doctor's office. Remember, you're not bothering anyone by asking, and that's exactly what VR is there for, is to help your young adults succeed.
Absolutely. Making sure you feel safe with the next step in the process. But of course, not every student will go right into a job market. There's other areas that they may be navigating for themselves.
Right. And that's where adult day programs can be a great fit. It doesn't mean that if you start an adult day program that will be your forever fit. It might just be a transition period. But these programs offer structure, socialization, and skill building without pressure of competitive employment. And some are focused on life skills like cooking or money management. Others incorporate volunteer work or community outreach.
I love that. So it's really, again, about matching the program to the student's needs and abilities the same way you tailor the IEP goals. And interestingly, this is all about what we talked about in the college episode.
Hmm.
Same thing, you have to find the right fit for your child's diagnoses with the right college structure for them. The same thing with an adult day program, finding the right fit based on who your child is as an individual.
Exactly. And this is where those honest conversations we talked about earlier become so important.
Mhm.
Because if the team knows your students' strengths and challenges and long term goals, they can point you towards the right blend of services. Maybe a couple of weeks in an adult day program or add a couple days of voc training. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
all or nothing, it can be a
So you can do a
combination.
combination. I like that. I love that idea of finding that good fit, that it doesn't have to be one size fits all. And
Right.
starting this process early really means that by the time graduation rolls around, you've already got a spot in a program, the paperwork's done, and your young adult has met some of the staff even in the program that you've selected.
Yeah, which takes away so much of the anxiety for both the student and the family. And I'll say it again, visiting programs in person, talking to other parents, and asking a lot of questions is key. It definitely helped us make a better decision on what we wanted for Morgan.
Mm.
You want to make sure the environment feels safe, engaging, and is respectful to your young adult.
It seems like that was the same research you did into the schools, public schools, that you select
Hmm.
the right program for her. You're going through that whole process again as you find that adult day program. And
Right.
visiting the programs in person, talking to other parents, asking all those questions that you've kind of prepared yourself for is really key for finding a good fit for your student. You wanna know the environment feels really safe and engaging, where they're not gonna just sit in a corner all day or play on
Right.
their iPad. And maybe some of the day, if that's what they love to do, to play on their iPad, but are they gonna challenge them and take them to a movie or have them sit at a lunch table with other people? Really having that respect and dignity for your child as an individual human being and including
Hmm.
that as part of the program.
Yeah. When Morgan graduated in May, we had some short term care arranged for the summer. So it gave us a little bit of breathing room. I didn't want to rush into a decision. I guess I probably wasn't ready. I wanted
It's
to
a
find the
beautiful
very best
decision.
place possible for her. And we knew we wanted to focus on adult training programs because those are designed to give adults with intellectual disabilities a chance to build friendships, be active in the community, develop life skills. And that was definitely more Morgan. She's very social.
She is. But I'm wondering, those programs aren't free, are they?
You are correct. They are not. So at the time, we were still on the Medicaid wait list.
Right.
Every state, I think every state has one,
Uh-huh.
because that typically the Medicaid waiver is what's going to pay for any type of extended services. So we actually had to apply under an emergency or crisis situation to try and move Morgan up the list because otherwise there would be no one to care for her while Stephen and I were both working. So
Oh.
in the interim, I started calling around. I reached out to the 3 closest adult day programs, plus one I knew that would definitely accept her because of her feeding tube, because we were very limited on paper on who would take her and who would not take her due
Because of
to the
her
feeding
medical
tube.
issue.
Yeah, and I came armed with questions, like, "What's your class size? What's your teacher to student ratio? Do you have a nurse on staff? How do you handle clients with medical needs? Do you use cameras in the rooms? How many
Oh,
adults do you serve, and are you close to capacity?"
wow, those are great questions for any parent to ask. I wouldn't even think about the cameras in the room.
Yeah, we learned later on that those were important. Another story for another time. So Steve and I made an appointment and toured the first one, the one we knew she would definitely fit into due to the medical. And the building was spacious. They had activities like cooking, art, music. They served adults with a wide range of disabilities. But I don't know, it just didn't feel right for her. Most of the adults there were much older than her. Some were bedbound, and the overall level of ability was a lot lower than we hoped for her. Because although she doesn't read and write, she's still very social. But after touring that facility, we got back in the car. And neither of us really wanted to say it out loud, but it was just depressing. And it wasn't the environment necessarily, it was depressing on what we wanted for her.
And she
We
was
wanted
20,
yeah,
in
she
her
was 20
20s.
years old, and we promised each other right then and there that if we didn't find the right fit, we'd figure out another plan because it just felt like that place she would have been very limited, and I don't know that she really would have been happy.
I mean, that's such a huge moment for you and Steven to have, knowing that something was safe on paper, that they knew how to handle feeding tubes, they did
Mhm,
a lot of medical, but in your heart realizing it's not the right environment for her. And for you all, with having a child with such spunk and creativity and sense of humor, that would be depressing for you all to see
mhm.
because she wouldn't thrive there. Some people it may be
No.
perfect, but for your child, that was not the right fit.
Right. So then from that point, I toured the next facility by myself.
I tried to
And I
tour
ac
the next one with you, and I showed up in the wrong parking lot, just so you know.
and I actually fell in love with the teachers. They were warm and
Oh,
welcoming, but the program was very small, only about 25 clients,
oh,
which to me seemed awesome. I felt like she'd be much more homey.
yeah.
They had themed rooms, a workout room. They even had a sewing room, life
Mm,
skills. I loved their curriculum and really well rounded program. But when I asked about staffing, they admitted they were struggling. They only
mm.
had 3 staff members at the time.
For
And
25
we were
people?
having a hard time, and they said they were having a hard time retaining people. And that
Mm.
was a huge red flag because what if someone got sick and then you're down to 2 and you have 25 adults that multiple might need assistance? Someone falls. I just couldn't see how Morgan would be safe in that environment.
And safety has to come first when you have complex issues like Morgan does.
Yeah. So I toured a third program also on my own. And
Good for you.
honestly, I was impressed from the moment I walked in.
Oh,
The
I love
place
that.
was buzzing with energy. There were younger and older adults together. There was a good balance, and their calendar was packed with activities. Every week, they were going to the park, they'd shop, bowling, they'd go to the movies in the summertime, and every Friday, they go out to lunch.
Oh, I lo in
So
the
into the
community, like a
community somewhere.
restaurant?
And the only downside was they were pretty much at capacity, which was a
Oh, okay.
roughly around 40, I think, at that time. But they did offer transportation, which is a huge
Oh,
help.
that's huge. Yeah.
And, my big question was, of course, about Morgan's feeding tube.
Were they
Um,
ones who accepted people with feeding tube?
no, no, and after we talked it through, they realized they wouldn't actually need to do anything with it since her feeds happened before and after the program time, so we were able to persuade them, and they were willing to accept her. And they
That
said that if we needed them to tube feed her while she was there, they would get someone, and we would make sure they were trained.
Oh,
So
that just gives me goosebumps. I even know the story, but
but it's willing you have to be willing to ask for what you need, and they may or may not be able to accommodate you,
and if
and
you
you
hadn't
have to
asked
compromise.
absolutely. That must have been a huge relief to find that program, and when you said when you walked into the room, it had a sense of energy in the room,
Mhm.
that fits Morgan's personality.
Well, and I just felt like it was upbeat and positive and energetic. You were energized when you walked in, but it also wasn't overwhelming. And those are all things that you're going to have to look out for your own child, that walking in an environment that's energized might be way too much for them. For
Yeah,
Morgan, she
thrive.
lives for that
Yeah,
environment.
it's a good balance, finding that
Yeah.
balance for your kiddo.
Yeah, and I think for us, one thing I will say that I did learn, that I was glad we waited to really tour these facilities to when we were closer to putting her in those programs, because those programs can change day to day. Like that one place that we went to that only had 3 staffers, they may have had a different time been much more equipped to be able to handle a large group of people. So there's a lot of the adult day transitioning is a little bit different than Voc Rehab, where Voc Rehab, I can see how you work from day one of on that
Job
IEP
training
at high school,
skills and
and you're working on all those goals. But placement actually
it's
happens closer, especially for the adult day programs. Those
'cause it's
happen
what's
closer.
available.
Right, and I'm sure the same thing with Voc Rehab. The grocery store may only be able to take 5 individuals, and that 5 individuals might be locked in. You wanna work on the transition type of preparation, but I think as a whole, also realize that you're gonna get more real time closer to that transition,
As it
the
gets
final
closer to the
transition.
date, there'll be more
Mhm.
things you have to accomplish together with
Yeah,
your team. So, I assume that's where Morgan ended up?
she did. It's called K2 Escape, and
Oh,
she loves it. It's 3 years this month.
I can't believe it's been that long,
I
and
know.
she loves
She'll
going?
She does. She enjoys going every day. She goes through periods of when she wants to go out in the community, and then other times where she doesn't at all. So she'll go through like months at a time where she doesn't want to leave.
Really?
And other times she does, but they let her make that choice. She
I love
decides
that.
if she wants to go to the movies that week or go out to lunch that week. And Morgan doesn't really eat because she's tube fed. So she brings her own lunch. So she'll
It's
just
more
bring that with
social.
her when they go out to lunch. So it works.
I love that. And have you recommended the program to other families you know?
We have a couple other families from her high school ended up going there. So it's kind of nice that they're happy there too. So it seems to be a good program and they've grown a lot. They've moved to a new building. So
I love
it's
it.
expanded.
I think your story highlights something so important, that this process of finding the right program can take time and patience and honestly a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. And we've been lucky that this has been a good fit for her right from the get go. It might not always be, it might change as she ages, but for right now, it's fulfilling what she needs it to do.
And it's important that as you're if s we're talking to families out there navigating this with their own kiddos, that it's from your story alone, I'm realizing don't be afraid to ask the hard questions about
Hmm.
staffing, medical accommodations, safety, or
Yeah.
even just that general vibe because you're not being pushing, you're advocating for your kiddo's future, and like you said, if you hadn't asked that program about Morgan's feeding tube, they may not even have been a contender, and it's been a beautiful
Right.
thing for her.
Right. Exactly. And remember, it's not about finding the perfect place. It's about finding the right fit. And for
Yes.
Morgan, that meant the environment where she could be active, social, safe. And we found that. But for another family, the best fit might look completely different.
And that's the huge takeaway, right? That every journey is unique, but with preparation, persistence, those honest conversations, you can find a setting where your young adult really is going to thrive after high school.
Yeah.
Today, we covered a lot from guardianship and those first overwhelming IEP transition meetings to exploring job training, voc rehab, and adult day programs.
If there's one thing we want you to take away, it's this. You want to start your conversations early, even if graduation feels years away. Because the IEP process is there to help you. Voc rehab and adult programs all work best when you've had time to plan, ask questions, prepare. Just gives you extra time to really think about what you think is the best fit for your child.
And every student's path will look different, and that's okay. The goal isn't to fit into just one mold, but it's to create opportunities that match their abilities, their needs, and their potential.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Lean on your IEP team. Connect with other parents and reach out to community resources. There are people and programs out there who want to support your family. And I know once we got the Medicaid waiver, which paid for the program, we
Oh,
then now have a case manager. She's the one that found the locations in our community because we were wanting Morgan to stay relatively close. We didn't want her far away. And I didn't want her sitting in a car, for 30, 45 minutes to get
each
home.
way. Yeah.
Right, each way. And that was just what we wanted. And we were lucky enough to be able to find that with Michelle's help. Once you get to that point, there's a lot of resources out there to help you.
I love it. I love it. I think that's my word for this episode. I love it. I'm saying that
Oh,
instead of 100%.
I know I didn't hear any 100%ers today.
I know I caught myself every time and I went, I love it. I love it. I love it. So we hope today's conversation is giving you some practical tools and a little reassurance that you're not the only one navigating this transition. It's truly a journey, but with patience and that persistence and that caregiver drive to take care of what's best for your kiddo, you'll find a place where they can thrive.
And make sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss it. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.